Coming up on this Tuesday edition of Daybreak, the National Assembly's regular parliamentary session kicks off amid a political deadlock over a bill aimed at uncovering the truth behind April's deadly ferry sinking. The US completes an on-site survey to confirm the feasibility of the development of its missile defense system in South Korea. A final decision on the deployment will be made soon. Plus, Ukraine's president accuses Russia of launching a direct and open aggression against the country after government forces suffer major setbacks against pro-Russian separatists. Daybreak begins now. Hello and thanks for joining us. To our viewers around the world, it's 6 a.m. on Tuesday, September 2nd here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to Daybreak. Our top story this morning, Korea's National Assembly launched its regular parliamentary session on Monday, but dark clouds hang overhead. Lawmakers have a slew of bills to pass, including an all-important budget review. But the rival parties can't get out of first gear until they pass a very highly contested bill on April's ferry sinking. Our Ji Myung-gil starts us off.
Some 300 lawmakers gathered Monday to open their regular parliamentary session and first plenary session. The Assembly Speaker used the opportunity to urge lawmakers to regain the people's trust and carry out their legislative duties.
We must put an end to the Sewol-ho ferry bill standstill. The rival parties should yield more and seek understanding. We must focus on reviving the economy to improve the livelihoods of the people and on improving relations between South and North Korea.
Over the next 100 days, the National Assembly is tasked with passing next year's spending budget and a set of economic stimulus and anti-corruption bills, as well as conducting the annual parliamentary audit on the government.
The regular parliamentary session must meet the needs of the people. We must work on next year's budget plans and pass bills related to improving the livelihoods of the people.
But before that can happen, the rival parties will have to resolve a month-long deadlock over a bill designed to uncover the causes of April's ferry accident. Extraordinary sessions were held in July and August, but not a single bill was passed amid the bipartisan wrangling.
The Century Party and the victims' families must reach a compromise over the Sewol-ho ferry bill. The New Politics Alliance for Democracy has been persistent in its efforts to enact it.
In attempts to break the impasse, Century Party floor leader Lee Won-gu held third round of talks with the victims' families on Monday, but they failed to reach an agreement. The bereaved families are not backing down from their demand that the committee in charge of the probe have the right to investigate and indict those found responsible for April's ferry tragedy. But the ruling Century Party is steadfast in its concerns that doing so could disturb the judicial system and the division of powers. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, North Korea test-fired another short-range missile into the East Sea on Monday. An official at South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff says it had a range of around 220 kilometers and that no prior warning was given. The official adds that it marks the first time, in fact, that the regime has fired a short-range projectile from its northwestern province of Jagangdo, which is just 60 kilometers from its border with China. The latest exercise, test firing, comes as cross-border military tensions run high, following a series of missile, rocket and artillery launches in July and August. 3 American citizens detained in North Korea have appealed to the US government to do more to secure their release. In an exclusive interview with CNN arranged by Pyongyang, the 3 men said they were being treated humanely, but that they hope Washington would soon send an envoy to bring them home. Kenneth Bae, serving a 15-year sentence for alleged hostile acts to overthrow the North Korean government, said he was doing hard labour, 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. Matthew Todd Miller and Jeffrey Edward Fowle are awaiting trial for their alleged crimes. Following the broadcast, the U.S. National Security Council said winning the detainees' release was Washington's top priority, and the State Department urged Pyongyang to grant Kenneth Bae in particular amnesty in light of his poor health. The United States is looking for possible locations in Asia to deploy its anti-ballistic missile defense system, and as North Korea ratchets up its threats, South Korea may indeed be a prime spot for the location. Now, Kim Min-ji reports.
The United States has reportedly finished conducting site surveys of possible locations to deploy its advanced missile defense system in Korea. Sources familiar with the matter say Washington has been checking out feasible locations in Asia to deploy its terminal high-altitude area defense system and military effects since earlier this year. The so-called THAAD system can strike down medium and intermediate-range ballistic missiles mid-air. Washington is likely to make a final decision on a site before the Korea-U.S. Security Consultative meeting next month. It's been speculated that the U.S. has been pressuring Seoul to join its tactical missile system. The Korean government, which has been building its own missile defense capabilities, has not opposed Washington's plan, saying that it will help deter North Korea's nuclear missile abilities, as well as strengthen security on the peninsula. Another source said that the visit of U.S. Deputy Defense Secretary Robert Work last month probably had something to do with the THAAD system. During the visit, Work said that Washington hopes for extreme interoperability with Korea in the air defense system. However, the Defense Ministry in Seoul says it hasn't received any official notification from the U.S. regarding the issue. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women has long been a source of tension between the two neighbouring countries, and a Japanese professor says public sentiment on this very emotive issue has plunged in Japan following Seoul's rejection of Tokyo's efforts to make amends. Our Hwang Sang-hee reports.
Japan has done its best to resolve the issue of its wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women, and the Japanese public will not allow for fresh apologies or a higher degree of compensation than was already given. That's the grim outlook put forward by Yasuaki Onuma, a professor of international law at Meiji University and the former director of the Asian Women's Fund. Set up by the Japanese government in 1995, the fund collected private donations and sent compensation to 364 former comfort women in Taiwan, the Philippines, the Netherlands, and Korea, each of whom received roughly $30,000. The government also provided direct funding for medical care for the recipients and issued hand-signed letters of apology from then Prime Minister Tomichi Murayama. In a recent interview with a group of Korean reporters in Tokyo, Onuma said hardline Korean civic groups were largely responsible for the current impasse. He said the Korean Council for the Women drafted for military sexual slavery by Japan harshly criticized the 7 Korean comfort women who decided to accept the money, saying they were once again selling themselves to Japan by taking Japanese cash. Onuma ruled out a revival of the Asian Women's Fund, pointing to the icy public sentiment in Japan. He said many Japanese people feel the country put its greatest efforts into resolving the comfort women issue and was rejected by Korea, adding that similar actions will not be allowed amid the current nationalistic tide in Japan. The Japanese professor said the individual happiness of the comfort women must be prioritized and that the issue should not become entangled in the diplomatic feud between Korea and Japan. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
We start before the sun rises to bring you the latest stories out of Korea. We also lead the way with important global coverage. Stay on the pulse of what is happening with Daybreak.
Now, in a bid to breathe new life into Korea's real estate market, the government has put forth measures to ease regulations and to scrap old laws. The Land Ministry says starting as early as the latter half of next year, housing units that were built between 20 to 30 years ago will be subject to reconstruction or redevelopment. This compared to the current 40 years set by a number of local governments, including Seoul and nearby Gyeonggi-do province. The move, aimed at encouraging development by private investors and homeowners, also includes allowing reconstruction or redevelopment of 20-year-plus units, even when there are only inconvenient living conditions such as a lack of parking space and not just safety problems. In order to tackle the housing oversupply, the government will also abolish a 34-year-old law that permits the establishment of large-scale residential towns like Bundang and Ilsan. Now, a majority of listed companies in Korea turned in poor performances in the first half, both in terms of sales and profits. Numbers compiled by the Korea Exchange show the sales of nearly 500 listed firms edging down 0.1% on year in the first half to just under $900 billion, with their operating profits also down nearly 12%. The exchange operator partly attributes the disappointing figures to lower than expected sales of Samsung Electronics' Galaxy S5 smartphone. Samsung logged slightly more than $100 billion in revenue in the first half. That's down 4% from last year, while its net profit shed 7% on year. The operating income of the tech giant accounts for about 1/3 of the benchmark Kospi's total capitalization. Now, Korea's finance minister has urged provincial governments to focus on boosting the domestic economy and supporting people's livelihoods. Minister Choi Kyung-hwan's comments came during a meeting with Seoul Mayor Park Won-soon on Monday, with Park pledging to cooperate with the central government in a bid to boost growth. The two agreed to organize a joint task force for a development plan that aims to turn the capital's Hangang River area into a major tourist attraction. Now, if you haven't heard of the so-called sharing economy yet, chances are you will very soon. The peer-to-peer marketplace is a fast-growing trend in which people essentially rent assets rather than actually owning them themselves. The growth has run parallel to the boom in smartphone ownership. Now, Kim Ji-yeon reports on what this shared economy looks like right here in Korea.
Green Car is a car-sharing service founded in 2011 that makes it easier for people to lend out cars at low prices. It's one of the most prominent examples of the sharing economy in Korea, in which people become more like users than owners of assets. Around 240,000 people have used this service so far. All it takes is a few taps on a smartphone application.
It's really easy to use this car sharing service. It's only $3 for using this Avante model for 30 minutes.
Users are instantly updated on what kind of vehicles are available in one of the so-called green zones, locations where people can pick up and drop off their vehicles after they're done using them. There are 700 green zones throughout the country, and so it takes just 10 minutes by foot on average to reach one. Green Car Marketing and Communications Director Yang Song-sik says that technological developments have allowed the convergence of the appropriate hardware and software, providing the best platform for the car-sharing service.
The technological advances make it easier for us to operate as platform providers for vehicles. GPS allows us to track where the vehicles are and who's using them, and through the smartphone application, users can easily lock and unlock the cars they wish to use.
Companies like Green Car are using their sharing economy to find ways to utilize idle assets and providing a platform to make them more resourceful. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Very interesting program there. Now, achieving gender equality in any country is a very tall task, but perhaps an even taller one throughout Asia, because cultural norms can make changes extremely difficult. To address the gender gap, a 4-day forum is currently underway right here in Seoul, and there are more than 24 high-profile women taking part. Shin Se-min has this report.
25 women from 17 countries who are prominent in their fields have gathered in Seoul for the Asia Women Leaders Program, where the priority will be on addressing gender gaps mainly in the Asia-Pacific region. Astrid Tuminas, who is regional director for Microsoft, opened the forum with a keynote address. In it, she said that having more educated women doesn't necessarily translate into more women leaders, particularly in Asia, because of cultural factors. She called on companies and corporations to take the initiative and invest in women as a resource.
Corporations should make the time and space and give the resources because they can't afford not to. Why can't corporations afford not to? First, there is a shortage of human talent, a shortage of human capital. And as the labor force shrinks, you are going to have to draw your talent from the women.
According to a recent report by the Korean Women's Development Institute, which is hosting the forum, Korea's lagging female economic participation rate over the past 13 years has amounted to $192 billion in social costs. And while Korea has invested in trying to narrow the gender gap in the workplace, one of the forum's participants says instituting change goes beyond a set of policies.
Government funds and support systems should not just be announced. They must be implemented and permeate a company's culture. Companies should not just follow these policies. They must also consider the distinctive characteristics of women. An understanding and thoughtful culture should be implemented.
The chairman of Industrial Bank of Korea says guaranteeing a balanced work life for women will eventually become a great asset that will increase the nation's competitiveness globally. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Time now for a look through the international headlines we're following on this Tuesday morning. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim standing by the news center. Good morning, Eunice.
Good morning to you, Mark. As fighting intensifies in Ukraine against separatist forces, big words from Kiev's defense minister. Minister Valery Gelety is warning of the worst conflict Europe has seen since World War II. On Facebook Monday, he underlined his military's need to build up its defenses against Russia and its, quote, full-scale invasion that's advancing to other parts of Ukraine, marking a shift away from Kiev's focus on fighting against rebels. Ukraine's troops retreated in recent days and ceded a strategic airport near Luhansk after suffering tens of thousands in casualties. This as Ukraine's President Petro Poroshenko met the chairman of the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Robert Menendez, on Monday and accused Russia of direct and undisguised aggression. Menendez had called on U.S. President Barack Obama to arm Ukraine amid what he called Russian invasion. And new this morning, the United Nations Human Rights Council has decided to send an emergency mission to Iraq, where it said it received reports of acts of inhumanity on an unimaginable scale. It was decided after Iraq's Human Rights Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani told an emergency session in Geneva that his country was facing a terrorist monster. Deputy Human Rights Commissioner Flavia Pansieri said the mission will investigate crimes committed by the Islamic State on civilians, including targeted killings, forced conversions, slavery, and sexual abuse. The UK is stepping up its defenses against terrorist threats after hiking up its threat level to the second highest degree Friday, citing events in Iraq and Syria. British Prime Minister David Cameron made his case at the House of Commons this morning for bolstered powers to fight the threat locally and abroad. He called on lawmakers to approve a new law that would give police temporary authorization to seize British passports belonging to citizens believed to support the Islamic State. Prime Minister Cameron also said Britain needed measures in place to block radical fighters from returning home. UK authorities estimate some 500 British citizens have moved to Iraq and Syria to fight with Islamic groups. And Japan's public broadcaster NHK reports Japan has confirmed 19 more cases of dengue fever, adding to the 3 cases already recorded last week. They're the first domestic cases of the mosquito-borne disease since the 1940s. Japan's health ministry said the virus was probably picked up by mosquitoes from visitors from abroad, then transferred onto domestic patients. Dengue fever is not contagious but is transmitted by the bite of an infected mosquito.
And a good Tuesday morning to you all as we kick things off with the 2014 Asian Games, where the Korean national football team officially began their training on Monday. Led by head coach Lee Kwang-jung and his 20-man roster, the team began their training for the upcoming Asian Games with high hopes. With Korea winning their last gold medal in the sport back in 1986, expectations are high, with Ulsan Hyundai Tigers striker Kim Shin-wook to lead the offense for the Taeguk Warriors. Meanwhile, the tournament kicks off with Korea facing off against Malaysia on September 14th. And now moving over to the LPGA, where the Korean LPGA golfers were looking to win their 4th straight LPGA event over the weekend, but fell just short. With Lee Mi-rim, Park In-bi, and Chen Ha-yeon winning the last 3 LPGA tours, Kim In-kyung hoped to make it 4th straight for Korea, but lost to Austin Ernst in the first sudden death playoff hole and finished second. A heartbreaking loss for Kim In-kyung, as her latest sudden death loss puts her at 0-5 in sudden death playoffs. And now shifting over to the majors, where LA Dodgers lefty Ryu Hyun-jin made a successful comeback from his injury as he won his 14th game of the season, this time against the San Diego Padres. Now pitching 7 solid innings, the lefty gives up just 1 run on 4 hits while striking out 7 Padres hitters, working mostly with his breaking ball to get the batters swinging away. Now with the win, he improves his record to 14-6 with a respectable 3.1 ERA so far this season. Meanwhile, for former Kia Tigers ace Yoon Sung-min, it was a rather disappointing first season overseas as he ended his first season in the minors and is set to return to Korea. The 28-year-old righty, who played for the Norfolk Tides, the AAA affiliation of the Baltimore Orioles, finished the season at 4-8 with an ERA of 5.74 and is set to come back to Korea for now. According to his agent, he will not be returning to the KBO as rumors previously stated, but instead will try again next season to make the major league roster. And now finishing things off in the KBO, no baseball on Monday night. So let's take a look at the current standings in the KBO so far this season. Of course, taking a look here, we see that the Samsung Lions have been struggling as of late, but still hold a 3.5 game lead over the second-place Nexen Heroes, with the NC Dinos struggling to keep up in third. Now the LG Twins barely hanging on to that 4th-place spot at the moment. Now taking a look at the bottom half of the table, the Tucson Bears are red hot as of late, but still trails the LG Twins by a single game. But check this out, the Lotte Giants, Kia Tigers, SK Wyverns, and even the Hanwha Eagles still in this playoff race, as this season proves to be quite exciting. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Final round of monsoon rain should start from today. It's going to be a heavy one. It will start from Jeju today and then gradually spread to the rest of the peninsula. About 5 to 100 millimeters of nationwide showers are in store till Thursday, and then some areas could receive up to 150 millimeters, including here in Seoul, and that rain could be very heavy at times. And it could be also accompanied by thunder and lightning. So for today, with clouds and rain forecasted to stick around, temperatures will be a lot cooler than yesterday. So let's take a closer look at today's temperatures. The morning low here in Seoul is starting out at 21. Then the high in the capital and Daegu will rise to 27, while Gwangju and Busan will peak at 25 and 28 respectively. Now for other regions, it looks like Jeju Island and Daejeon will top out at 28, and Dokdo should see highs of 23, while Mount Kungang rise to 17. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, those are the stories we have for you at this hour. For more of the latest stories, don't forget to check out our website, which can be found at arirang.co.kr/news. I'll be back for our next full newscast at 10 a.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.